Political panel is something that follows next. The regulation will again be at the heart of that panel. About 5 months ago, the European Commission adopted the first of its kind comprehensive proposal for a regulation on artificial intelligence, aiming to turn Europe into a global hub for trustworthy AI, and of course, spearheading global efforts to set standards in this area. Now, the proposal has now entered the negotiation process between the European Parliament and the Council, who will need to negotiate and adopt the Commission's proposal in the ordinary legislative procedure. The Slovenian Presidency of the Council has placed the AI regulation as a top priority and is keen to advance as much as possible on the file. The European Parliament has also chosen a lead parliamentary committee and started working on the future European Parliament's position. And the high-level panel that follows will provide an introductory political frame in relation to the EU regulatory approach to artificial intelligence. And helping me achieve that would be excellent panelists. With us again, Boštjan Koritnik, Minister of Public Administration. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
And online will be Roberto Viola, Director General, DG Connect at the European Commission, Brando Benifei, Member of the European Parliament, and Katrine Winding, Director General of the Danish Business Authority, Christa Schweng, President of the European Economic and Social Committee, and Marina Bill, President of the European Partnership on AI, Data and Robotics. Thank you all for joining us. Let's start first with introductory statements. We are kind of time limited, so I would really ask you if you could limit yourself to maximum 2 minutes, and then we'll have rounds of questions. Minister, you're first.
Thank you. I will speak rapidly. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, I believe that EU should become a world player in this field, and it should define how we want to live with AI and with the help of AI. We need to ensure that European values are enshrined in our ethical, legal, social frameworks and developed in line with the possibilities that the technology offers. This will of course require smart, effective public policies which can ensure common benefits and improvement of living standards globally, not just within the EU. This is why the Slovenian Presidency actively encourages discussion, co-organizes this event also, and it searches for solutions and on ethical regulatory approaches to AI. We see the activities undertaken so far within the European Union as very positive. In a positive light, there's emphasis on human centricity, ethics, human rights. Those are all elements that need to play a central role in the use of AI. Of course, it is crucial, as with all digital solutions and technologies, to create a high level of trust in AI, which is a precondition for effective uptake of different AI solutions in various segments. We should not limit ourselves to soft approaches or even self-regulation because the current technological solutions have already shown important impact and effect on our societies. Therefore, the legislation should be open, flexible, and adapt to future developments and AI solutions. And this means that we are not supposed to regulate technology itself, but its use. And the assurance of legal, secure, and trustworthy AI systems is very important, especially in those areas that bring higher risks to individuals and to the society overall.
Thank you. Mr. Roberto Viola, your thoughts first.
Well, I'm happy to donate my 2 minutes to the other panelists because I just had an interview with you, so happy to donate the minutes.
Thank you. Brando Benifei, What would you say?
Yes, good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. Thanks to the Commission and the Slovenian Presidency for inviting level panel. The AI Act is a proposal on which we see a lot of expectations from all sides, inside and outside the EU. Indeed, we feel the eyes of global stakeholders on us as we start our work. As you know, I'm presently the appointed rapporteur for the Parliament on behalf of the Committee on Internal Market and Consumer Protection. I'm also the shadow rapporteur of the Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence set up by the Parliament at the beginning of this term, where we delve into the many facets of AI and its impact on all sectors of society. Since we don't have much time, I just want to say that the Parliament is still discussing internally on how we organize our work, and we will start the drafting on the proposal in a few weeks. I know there will be more specific questions also going on, so what I will say now is that it is of paramount importance to get this complex framework right, with the proper balance between innovation and protection from the intrinsic personal and societal risks that AI inevitably brings. We are ready to do this with a positive attitude, being aware that if we manage to create a single market for trustworthy AI, where trust, again, I insist, is the key element, we will be able to attract and retain talent and build excellence. And our citizens will be able to fully exploit the enormous opportunities that AI brings, benefiting our society. This means that beyond the debate on the prohibited use cases, we need to think thoroughly about the requirements for high-risk applications, how it would work in practice, the framework for conformity assessment that I think needs some fixing, and the resources needed for the enforcement of the regulation. Not an easy task, given the characteristics of AI, with its sometimes lack of transparency and its adaptive and learning nature. But we need to make sure instead that we promote AI systems that can be understandable, that support and serve people and society, not the interest of a few. I hope this is one of the many occasions that we will need to build in dialogue among institutions, stakeholders and citizens to achieve the best possible result for our continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Katrine Winding, you are next.
Thank you very much, and thank you for organizing this conference, which allows us to discuss one of the very important digital files on the table. We're very supportive of this proposal's risk-based approach, and I think trustworthy and innovative AI must be two sides of the same coin. So we have to strike the balance between setting the right requirements and safeguards in order to achieve the trustworthy AI, while at the same time we have to facilitate and promote innovation. At the Danish Business Authority, let me mention this, we know from experience that both objectives are important in the AI journey, so both the trust and the innovation side. We've developed rather advanced AI technology tools to be more effective in our detection of fraud and financial crime. So at one side we're very innovative, but at the other side is that we actually make very use of the tools that we need to be transparent, responsible, and accurate. These are very, very important elements of applying AI in order to be trustworthy. If we look at the European approach towards AI, I believe that the Commission's proposal is a very, very good starting point. But we also believe that we have some work ahead of us. If I can just touch upon three practical things. First of all, we should aim at a clear and narrow concepts in the regulation when it comes to the definition for AI. This goes for the broad definition of AI, but it's also the case when we classify high-risk AI. I think it's essential that we clearly limit the high-risk category to applications which may cause serious risks. So the category of high-risk AI should be the exception rather than the rule. Secondly, we have to think implementation from the very beginning, meaning that we have to think about practical guidance, standards, regulatory sandboxes, which are all things that are helpful when you have to apply new regulation. We saw from GDPR, some of the experiences was that uncertainty and about what the rules entail, they actually drive compliance costs. So I think this is something to be aware of. And lastly, I think we shouldn't forget the general objective, which is also to enhance trustworthy AI. So in order to develop trustworthy AI and for consumer take-up of trustworthy AI, I think we should also think about the incentives. We believe in Denmark that perhaps a EU labeling scheme would be one way of doing this. Next week, we're actually launching a new labeling scheme in Denmark for IT security and responsible use of data. This includes AI as well. And we believe actually that such a trademark of trustworthy AI can become a competitive advantage for companies, as it makes it easier for the consumers to choose trustworthy AI. I think that was my 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. With us is also Miss Christa Schweng. It's your turn, please, your thoughts.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. So as President of the European Economic and Social Committee, I'm proud to say that we started our work on artificial intelligence back in 2017. Next week, we will be adopting our opinions on both the AI Act and the coordinated plan. Today, I'm pleased to be able to share some initial thoughts with you and our audience. I do not need to stress how important artificial intelligence is for Europeans and European businesses. We firmly believe that the proposed regulation and the coordinated plan are key to generating the confidence needed for Europeans' commitment to AI. They can both ensure a competitive advantage and constitute an asset at global level. For many years now, we've been calling for one common denominator, the human in command approach. Only by putting humans at the center of any development and application of AI will we build up trust and ensure that AI cannot be misused to harm fundamental rights, democracy, or the rule of law. Europeans do not think that the current rules regulate and oversee AI properly. Around 56% of Europeans have little trust in authorities exerting effective control over AI. The main concern is that artificial intelligence can lead to unfair discrimination based on individual characteristics or social categories. This is why we need this regulation in order to gain people's trust and enable successful deployment of this European ecosystem of excellence and trust. The ESC is strongly committed to working towards this common objective in order to make the EU the global driving force for human-centric, inclusive, safe, sustainable, and trustworthy AI. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ms. Marina Bill.
Thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure for me to be here today to discuss the future of AI and its governance. I'm the first chair of ADRA, and ADRA is the AI Data and Robotics Partnership. It's one of the European partnerships that has been established under the EU Horizon program. We are a very new organization, was very newly formed, and our goal is to deliver really the greatest benefit to Europe by driving innovation, acceptance, and uptake of the technology. And together, and working in an ecosystem, we think we can work towards really boosting new markets, applications, attract even more investments, and creating economic and social values, both for businesses, citizens, and for the environment. Industrial IA is crucial globally, and particularly for Europe. And having a quick update and using it rightly, we can see continued growth and also in a more sustainable and safe way. Putting AI together with cloud, edge computing, digital twins, and 5G, we can obtain a lot. We can get more efficiency, higher quality, more variety, productivity, and also opening up to new data-driven business models. Of course, all being done in a trustworthy manner. For the SMEs, being the backbone of the economy in Europe, it's extremely important that we also work on the competence level and the knowledge level so that we can have a quick uptake in these areas. We are in exciting times right now, and AI is a game changer for the industry. So I hope that we commonly in forums like this and working together in an ecosystem can use this the right way to commonly create an even better future.
Thank you, and thank you all for your introductory statements. Now we will discuss your respective positions on the regulatory proposal. I'm going to start with you, Minister Koritnik. Your background is in law. Why is it important to have a regulation on AI now?
Well, in short, because we are aware of the reality and we are dedicated to the success of Europe in the future. So that would be really in short. But actually, if we look at it from the other perspective, AI is a technology of general interest. It has and will have impact on all areas of our life, work, life, even legislation, and it will be able to solve complex problems that we used human decision-making to solve. So AI is also used and will be used in services, products that will affect human rights, fundamental freedoms, and of course, those are all part of EU legislation and a cornerstone of our democracy. Therefore, we need a legislation that will put these impacts, these effects, influence under public scrutiny, democratic scrutiny, and of course, from the AI perspective, human rights need to be systematically, uniformly addressed across the EU. And that is why we need a consolidated EU approach now.
Roberto Viola, Director General of DG Connect. Thanks again for your generous donation. The AIA aims at building trust by respecting fundamental rights and ensuring safety. However, excellence is the other priority of the European Commission. Now, how the proposal, how does it ensure balance between excellence and trust?
Thanks. And indeed, I mean, when we presented our strategy, our white book for artificial intelligence, we said we want to see in Europe two ecosystems, an ecosystem of trust based on rules and based on transparency and respect of fundamental rights, and an ecosystem of excellence delivering to society the best. Now, probably the best example I can make on how we want to do it. It's what we have done, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, what the European institutions have done for the European COVID certificate. That is a mix of clear rules that respect the privacy and the fundamental rights of people, but also very sophisticated technology that is behind the certificate. And this has been now, I mean, it's basically the world standard used by, we already have issued 500 million certificates. And this shows in Europe how we do things, where the European institutions work together to ensure the respect of the rights which are enshrined into the various European values. And then, I mean, the community, researchers, scientists work together and try to deliver the best for society. This is unique. And this is what we want to do in AI. Beside the regulation, we have created the largest network of supercomputers of the world, which will be dedicated to AI. One of the sisters, there are 7 supercomputers that are being built in Europe. One of these, Vega, has been recently inaugurated in Slovenia, and I know will be dedicated to AI application. There will be other 7 in Europe that will form a network which will be the most powerful network in the world of supercomputers. We are looking at, it was mentioned by some speakers, the idea of replicating with digital twins either our environment, so the digital twin of the earth, or ourselves, the digital twin of the body. And we have a specific project for the digital twin of the earth, which is called Destination Earth, which will model everything about the environment, using our satellites, data that are coming, models, in order to anticipate, to understand, I mean, where we are going in terms of the environment, to understand, I mean, how extreme weather events come up, and to predict the evolution of those events. And we will go on in terms of other societal challenges using data and algorithms. So Destination Earth will be the largest public venture when it comes to putting together researchers in AI, data scientists, computer scientists, and of course, supercomputing infrastructure. The same we want to do in medicine. The same we want to do in human science. So I think we are very, very committed and serious when we say the two ecosystems have to go together. Clear rules, not too heavy, but not too light either. Balanced rules that guarantee the transparency in the respect of fundamental rights, and the best possible for our citizens when it comes to research infrastructure, computing, and of course, human capital.
Brando Benifei, you are a member of the European Parliament. The Commission's AIA proposal aims to harness the full potential of AI while simultaneously addressing the risks to the rights and safety of European citizens. Now, do you think that the proposal of the Commission achieves its objectives? Where might be the areas where the Parliament may propose changes?
Well, I will start by saying the Parliament has appreciated the nuanced approach the Commission has taken regarding the risk levels. So taking into consideration the demands of the Parliament and of civil society. It can be improved even better, probably, but this is a very good step in our direction, what the Parliament has raised, because the four-tier risk framework is a clear improvement compared to the previous debates about only binary, high-risk, low-risk categorization, which I think would have been too limiting. Apart from the Article 5, on which I think we will talk later more in detail, we need to better assess the procedures for putting an AI system of the EU market, in particular for high-risk users. I will name one aspect I find a bit concerning. Currently, all but one of the use cases listed in Annex 3 are allowed to undergo an internal conformity assessment procedure, after which the developer can affix the CE marking and thus declare compliance. Of course, as stated by Commissioner Vestager in an exchange we had in the Parliament, this helps build volume and build a culture of development and speed up AI uptake in Europe. However, seeing how impactful these use cases are to people's lives, impactful on fundamental rights, access to services, access to citizenship rights, I wonder if it is right to go into this path and only find out about defective or non-compliant system by market surveillance checks when it is too late and damage has been done, as it often occurs with other harmonized products. So I think we will need to seriously reflect on this and try to find a balance between different interests.
Katrine Winding, Director General of the Danish Business Authority. Now, do you think that the Commission's regulatory proposal achieves the right balance between protection of fundamental rights and innovation? Is that really a trade-off?
I think that striking the right balance will be one of the most essential tasks, and also probably the most challenging one as we proceed with this file. But in my view, it's not a matter of trade-off. we have to address serious risks and we have to protect citizen safety. Trust is essential. Otherwise, we won't see a fast and broad uptake of AI, and we will not be able to reach the full potential of AI. So it goes hand in hand. But the regulatory framework should also be the foundation of an innovation-friendly single market with scalability across borders. And I think perhaps at this moment, the properties of AI as defined in the proposal right now are at the risk of being too broad and for instance, encompass simple statistical systems. I think they've been around for years and years, and we don't believe that this should be considered AI. And at the same time, we should also keep in mind that we're looking at very fast evolving technology, and we need the regulation to be future-proof, goes without saying. So we should aim for clear and narrow categories. Otherwise, we risk of putting unnecessary requirements on AI and stifling the market, and thereby we could risk delaying innovative solutions to the market. So it's really a delicate balance here, but there is no trade-off, I believe. So if we get it right, if we get a clear and operational framework, it should be a strength for innovation, because we would have a truly single market for AI and scalability across borders.
Thank you. Christa Schweng, the European Economic and Social Committee, is preparing an opinion on the AIA. Now, could you give us a glance on how your stakeholders see the Commission's proposal?
Yeah, thank you. In fact, we're going to adopt these opinions, as I've already said, next week. I'm happy to share our preliminary thoughts, and I would like to focus on 4 main points. So firstly, we recommend clarifying the definition of AI. The current definition raises questions as to whether all examples can truly be considered to be AI and whether some important AI techniques are not missing. When it comes to prohibited practices defined as unacceptable risk, we find some wording is unclear, which could make certain bans difficult to interpret and easy to circumvent. Secondly, the prohibition of social scoring. Here we agree to 100%. But prohibition that is limited to public authorities is not enough. We would strongly recommend also including private organizations and semi-public bodies. Third, the big question of biometric identification. We know that all these types of AI practices are extremely invasive and pose substantial risks of violating a number of fundamental rights. We therefore call for a ban on the use of AI for automated biometric recognition in publicly and privately accessible spaces, with exception for authentication purposes in very specific circumstances. Fourthly, we call for there to be a complaints and redress mechanism for organizations and individuals that have suffered harm from any AI system. Every person must have the right to challenge decisions taken solely by an algorithm. The discussion that we are having today is very important if we want to make this regulation work. This is why we will continue debate with our 329 members next week, when we will be adopting these 2 opinions on the EI Act and the coordinated plan.
Thank you. Marina Bill, your organization represents the European Partnership on AI, Data and also Robotics. Now, you know very well what the concerns of the industry and research alike are like, and how do you see the impact of the regulation on the EU value chain?
Yes, thank you. Well, ADRA, as I said in the beginning, is around newly formed, and we are there, and we have been formed to really to help to establish a platform or even more an ecosystem to facilitate the AI adoption across Europe. And in that respect, we really welcome that this is risk-based and has a very human-centric approach. Now, if we will see how the impact could be, maybe the question could be, how can we make sure that the impact is very positive? And I'm interested to hear the other panelists, because we have a lot of commonalities here. A few things that will make the impact very positive. The first thing is that the AI rules at EU level, they have to be built really on the legacy of the sectorial regulations for goods and internal markets that are already there. We need to have it, make sure that it's aligned with things like GDPR, and we also need to take in consideration the other initiatives like Data Act and machine learning, so that the new framework can be complementary and that it's not creating overlaps, because then it will be unclear and not so easy to be implemented. So make sure that it's really complementary to all the other things that are already out there. Also, it needs to be clear and easy. And also, to go back to the definitions has to be very clear, so that it's not just general software and so on. We have to be very, very specific on this, to both work on the trust side, but also really make sure that we boost the innovation that can take place. Therefore, it's also good with having, saying there's the high-risk AI system, and that the low-risk AI system can continue without having too much regulatory burden. But we need to work more on this clear and easy definitions. Generally, for this thing to really take us is, and I think we should never forget that, we need to work on the knowledge and the competence, but also the support and the and all the investment that we need to do, because otherwise it will also not help. Finally, which has also been said by several here, it needs to remain flexible and future-proof. This technology set is so exciting. Things are happening every day. It's changing and new ideas come up. We need to make sure to have an act that can be as agile as this, so that we don't only have agile development, but that also we can work here in an agile way to make sure that we adapt to the circumstances around us, and also get the full benefit of what the technology can bring to us.
Thank you. Minister Koritnik, we heard all the different views and understand better the complexity. Now, Slovenia has the presidency till the end of this year, which is a bit more than 3 months, and the discussion in Council are very intense. What do you think Slovenian presidency will be able to achieve on that file?
Well, in my opinion, AI is an important building block of Europe's European digital future, and we are aware that the proposal will influence many areas, AI deployment, especially when marked as bringing high risk. Of course, these are also in the area of justice and home affairs, for instance, internal security, migration, justice, and fundamental rights. What we know, and we will give special attention, some member states emphasize that, so that we can include law enforcement and judiciary purposes for AI. Justice and internal affairs ministers will have possibility to contribute where appropriate to discussions. So we have to, like, as we have the presidency, we have to be an honest broker. We will hear all the voices, all the interests, and of course this is really important for the potential success of the act. What is also important, what we already heard, is that we have targeted investment, balanced regulatory approach, so that we don't stifle innovation, and our presidency ambition in this respect is to continue, of course, the discussion on the proposal of the AI Act. Our objective is to hear all the voices, complete at least one full reading of the text, and we want to present the first compromise proposal or progress report by December this year.
Quite ambitious. Thank you. Roberto Viola, the regulation will have to be applied by companies from around the globe that want to place AI systems on European markets. Now, will the regulation make the EU a global standard setter for trustworthy AI?
That's my and our hope as Europeans, and I think there's a very good chance. And the reason why there's a good chance, if you've seen the tech regulations for Europe, has set the standard in the area of privacy, in the area of net neutrality, in the area of platform economy. And the reason is that Europe has unique blend when it comes to the way legislation is done of technical expertise and political wisdom, which is enshrined in the way, legislation is passed in Europe, which is a balance between Parliament and Council. And this avoids extremism, populism, or things that then do not stand the future. And I'm sure, and I'm a great believer that the work that Parliament and Council are doing will proposal, and hopefully will land also this proposal in this kind of space where equilibrium will be found. But there's a but. And the but is that we maintain the approach, not because I want to make a sales pitch of what the Commission has done, but I'm a firm believer of the risk-based approach and of the horizontal approach. There won't be an AI regulation for justice, an AI regulation for healthcare, an AI regulation for machines. This would be the end of this dream to have a quite horizontal approach to different problems. And then we will enter into a bit of frankly, a mess of micro rules. That's why it's important that the horizontal approach is kept. And we work within an horizontal framework to see the various issues and problems. And some you heard in this panel, and I think it will, all of these problems will deserve a thorough examination by the co-legislator, and the Commission is ready to help. So we need to maintain this horizontal approach. The other part is about standards. The regulation as such functions, especially in areas where technical regulation is necessary, with standards which do not exist. So we need the engagement of the stakeholders, we need the engagement of the like-minded partners on the world to have common standards around, certification of AI systems, because otherwise many of the things which are in the regulation will not function properly. So if we achieve a balanced output when it comes to the legislative process, which I'm sure, if we maintain this horizontal approach, which is very necessary, and we are not tempted to just listen one or the other community, and we continue being engaged with our partners in the world, especially with the like-minded partners, to develop world standards, I'm sure that this regulation, as I said before in the interview, can become the gold standard for AI regulation in the world.
Thank you. Mr. Brando Benifei, you have in public expressed critical views on the Commission's approach on biometrics. Please do share what should be changed in your view.
Well, this is one of the hot topics at the moment on the AI debate and on the proposal, and rightly so, as it can entail major risks and go against our very deep principles of the European integration of its basic principles, even though, as I already said, it is not the only aspect to improve on which the Parliament will work. What is particularly concerning in this case is the indiscriminate power it would give to public authorities to perform intrusive checks for security and law enforcement reasons. The very fact the Commission puts it into prohibited practices means it acknowledges the very high risk it represents to citizens' privacy, to democracy, to the risk of control, and exceptions that are detailed in Article 5 are also clearly taking that into account, but they are too extensive, too easily interpreted in various ways by the executives. So I believe that, and I know that also the Council is having discussions between the ministers of the various different remits on exactly these aspects. So I believe the right thing to do would be to ban this use, as it is in fact written, but with too many exceptions. as repeatedly requested not only by many MEPs, but also by several prominent civil society organizations, I think with good arguments. Imagine it in the hands of authorities in countries that are not respectful of the rule of law or separation of powers. Unfortunately, as Parliament, we think that we are not pursuing this fight with enough strength inside the Union, and so we are also worried inside our own Union about what could happen. Europe is the home of the GDPR, the most advanced data protection law in the world. We cannot afford to do anything less with the AI Act, and instead I think we can build stronger models that could be also a way for us to show that there can be a human-centered European AI model. Thank you.
Thank you. Katrine Winding, the proposal foresees that the implementation of the regulation should mainly be done by member states, state authorities who will appoint relevant national bodies. Now, while coherence of implementation in the single market will be ensured at the EU level by new AI board. Now, how do you see this attribution of roles?
Okay, going to the governance and organization. Well, as a preliminary view, we're positive that the governance and the enforcement setup is building on existing structures. For instance, when it comes to market surveillance, this makes it possible for us to take advantage of our experiences at national level. It also avoids duplication of procedures for the developers and providers. So that's a good thing. Another advantage is also that implementation at national level can actually increase assessment capacity. For instance, when providers should need to certify an AI system. At the same time, I think we should be aware that that there could be a potential competency gap within the existing structures that we need to address when we go ahead and the regulation enters into force. And I think that member states will need a sufficient transition period also in this sense. At the same time, then there's also the AI board, which should play a key role in order to ensure that there is an effective implementation and enforcement across the EU. And I think that what we also I asked for clear and an operational framework, but we have to acknowledge that even with a very clear and operational framework, we will see gray areas happening, because it is, as I also mentioned before, fast-moving technology. So we will encounter gray areas, and I think that one of the key tasks for the AI board would be to develop practical guidance in due time, so as we go along. And I think another important task for the AI board will be coordination, of course, to ensure that we have a coordinated approach, because this is necessary when establishing a genuine single market for AI. And I think actually that single market for AI is essential if we want to take the lead in AI and inspire and compete at global level. So preliminary view, it looks very good and operational. Thank you.
But it remains to be seen, right? Thank you. Christa Schweng, we understand that for the European Economic and Social Committee, it is important that the human in command principle is ensured. Now, do you think that the proposal addressed sufficiently that humans always stay in control of AI?
Well, we firmly believe that the development of artificial intelligence must be responsible, safe, and useful. So for us, it's crucial that machines remain machines and that people retain control over those machines at all times. We do feel that what is lacking in the AI Act is the notion that AI should serve to augment human decision-making and human intelligence, rather than replace it. We therefore recommend that the AI Act provide for certain decisions to remain the prerogative of humans. For us, this is particularly true for some domains where those decisions have a moral component and a societal impact. To name but a few, the judicial system, law enforcement, social services, healthcare, and education. So for further exchanges with stakeholders, we at the ESC are going to organize a second AI stakeholder summit. And this summit will be taking place on the 8th of November and be prepared in cooperation with the European Parliament's Special Committee on AI. We will focus on the AI package as well as on skills, the uptake of AI in SMEs, and much more. And I'm most pleased to be able to invite you to this event.
Thank you. Ms. Marina Bill, the Commission has ambitious objectives regarding the uptake of AI by companies and the public sector. Now, do you have confidence that the regulation will help achieve these objectives?
I mean, it's a start, but the idea of setting up really a European artificial intelligence board is a step in the right direction to really ensure that we have proper governance and enforcement of the AI Act across Europe, and also that we avoid fragmentation. But alongside this board, we would also like to recommend the establishment of a permanent exchange platform between the AI board and the industry to make that permanent. And we also welcome the possibility for the industry to draw codes of conduct that could further promote both the trust and adapt this to the rapidly evolving nature of this technology. But most important, while the AI Act is focusing primarily on the mitigation of risks, which we fully acknowledge, we should not forget that AI is a massive opportunity. And the framework should also lay the ground to support innovation. So therefore, we welcome the introduction of regulatory sandboxes, but they should be easy accessible, especially for SMEs and startups. Both AI and robotics are really critical for Europe to keep faith really in the promise of an industrial renaissance and to deliver more and better jobs. The partnership between the private and public sector is really a fundamental role in really encouraging this take-up of the digital manufacturing, as well as funding AI projects. And looking at the fragmentations, it's clear that some EU member states are already very prepared. There was in The Economist a couple of years ago looking at the automation readiness, where some countries in Europe come up very, very high, top of the list, while others are in other parts. So we have to make sure that also the ones that are not there catch up, so we come to a more similar level here. And the strategy is really important steps in the right direction to provide some fertile ground for funding also, but collaboration and deployment of AI across sectors and member states, but also reducing risks and costs also for the private partners. So we can connect these new transformative technologies and processes with the business need and reducing complexity and make it clear and also streamline compliance. I think we step by step can get there. And as an association, we are really looking forward to support the European approach to AI. And we think that if it's done right, it can really greatly contribute to build a resilient Europe for really the digital decade that we are already in. It's not something that is coming soon. We are already here, so that we can make sure that people and business can really enjoy in a safe way the benefits of AI.
Thank you very much. Now we have some time left, so if anyone would like to add anything to our debate, you're more than welcome. We're fine? Okay, then I would like to thank you all for being part of our conversation. Boštjan Koritnik, Minister of Public Administration. Roberto Viola, Director General of DG Connect, Brando Benifei, Member of the European Parliament, Katrine Winding, Director General of the Danish Business Authority, Christa Schweng, President of the European Economic and Social Committee, and Marina Bill, President of the European Partnership on AI, Data and Robotics. Thank you very much for sharing your views with us and being part of our conference.